Pretty good. You,
Good. Good
you're
to
looking
hear.
good. What's the shirt you're wearing? What does it say? Vintage
Uh,
what?
says Grin Moto. I have some vintage motorcycles, and the company is he calls himself. It's my buddy's thing, and he calls it Grin Moto because when you're riding an old vintage motorcycle, you're smiling. So he calls it Grin Moto.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long have you been a fan of bikes?
Well, I've been riding since I was 16 years old, so that's I got 53 years in, and I used to compete off road. I used to road race motorcycles in New Hampshire, so
No
I've done it all.
way.
Oh yeah.
Peter, I don't know if you know, but a former coach at McGill University who coached the national team, Peter Smith, he's similar to you, is uh, a biker buff, and he loves Harleys. He's got a collection of Harleys.
Yeah, I rode Harleys for 18 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you
that's an expensive hobby. Those Harleys are not cheap.
do you still ride?
I do. I still ride, and I've got about 6 or 7 of us are going to go in the first week of June. We're going to ride through New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. We'll do about 1,200 miles, and then we've got some off-road type motorcycles that they're street legal, but there's a whole series, and I'm sure you have the same thing up there, of dirt roads that are networks of like seven. You can ride 700 miles on just dirt
Yeah.
roads, and
Just
we'll do
hold the
that.
line. Hey, Jordan, I'm on with Peter right now. Yeah. Okay. I tried that. Um, Shift Command 5. Oh, it looks like it's going to work here. Yeah. Oh, well, I've got it. It looks. Thanks. Thank you. Bye. Well, I'm just trying to play with record. I just got off the phone with Jordan Fenton,
Okay.
but he has to approve me as a host.
Oh, okay.
So I'm
Yeah.
not.
So you mentioned McGill too. My son was actually recruited by McGill.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he went to. So Matt went to a couple different schools, but he went to a prep school called Stansted College.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Yep. And he was recruited out of there. He was a senior, but he was only 17.
Yeah.
So he figured that he wanted to try to keep playing before going off to college because he felt like that was a little young to go and start playing in college, especially at a place like McGill.
Yeah. I had to try out. I had to start school a year early because my mother was sick.
Oh boy.
So I had to try out at 17, and luckily I made it and survived the first year of
Yeah.
university hockey. But it is a big step, and fortunately that year there were two other first year players who were 18, and we made it, and we were sort of the energy line, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So yeah, so I still ride. I still ride the motorcycles. I still do that, and you know.
tell me, how does it affect your back?
Actually, you set the bike up like there. Yes, there's some seating positions that when I was in my 20s, I could do all day long, and now I wouldn't go near them,
Yeah.
just because the handlebars, the rise of the handlebar
Yeah.
will dictate right the bend of your back. So if it's a bit of you find the sweet spot where that handlebar is in a good spot, because you can get by aftermarket things called handlebar risers that will raise the handlebar, and so I've got that on one of the bikes. The other bike is fine, but one of them is a little low for me, so I put the handlebars up, and it's comfortable.
How many bikes you got?
Right now I have 3. My collection was 7, but then when I had my surgery for my hips, I sold off like 3 or 4 of them, just because I knew I wouldn't be able to maintain them. So with the recovery and all that, so down to 3, but we might be looking for another one. You never know.
Hey, hi, Hal. We're talking bike. Harley Davidson biking, and I didn't know this, but Peter's a rider, and he's got a collection of 3 vintage motorcycles. So, do you ever get into that? Check your speaker.
There we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
No, I've never got into donor cycles. Oregon donor cycles.
That's right. Minnesota is all about the snowmobiles anyway.
Yeah, I know. No, I haven't. I did safer stuff like ride on bucking broncos and stuff like that. So, yeah, just be careful. Those things, you can get whacked.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I was telling Wally, I used to road race, and
wow.
Yeah, there's an expression called sky ground, and that's what you see when you crash and you fall off as you're tumbling down the racetrack.
I play guitar Saturday mornings with a young guy. He's 30, and he races motorcycles.
That's awesome.
And so I've been up to the Brainerd racetrack. I went up to watch them a couple times. I probably will go again this summer. That is crazy. The speeds, you know, it's like, but you know, there's a lot of things in life that are crazy. So people say coaching hockey until you're 75 years old is probably crazy too. So
yeah, no, 100%. Hey, at the end of the day, like, I think we all share the same sentiment: is when it is our time, 50 years from now, that we don't have the regret to, I wish I had tried this. Or
right.
Yeah. So far, I don't have that. So far.
I've done a lot of things a few times just because I wanted to do them, but I don't stay with it, like flying a glider plane and flying in a single engine plane. And then I got to fly in a couple corporate jets. That was pretty fun. I didn't fly them. I was in them. The others I were flying. Scuba diving. I did a lot of scuba diving when I was a lot younger, but not anymore.
I've done the plane thing too. I've flown a 2-seater and a 4-seater.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and then a little bit of skydiving got thrown in there. My 60th birthday. This is a funny story. So my 60th birthday, my daughter-in-law gets a skydiving gift. She wants to take my son.
Yeah.
Husband, right? And at that point, she's like, "No, I'm not doing that." So she and I went up 10,000 feet, and you jump out of a perfectly good airplane, and away you go.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's probably all right. The statistics will probably tell you that it's not, it's safer than driving your car to the airport.
Well, yeah. There's nothing really in the way, and you're hooked up when you're doing it. It's this whole organ thing where they're pretty organized. You go through this whole safety regime. You know what's happening, and they hook you up to an instructor, and they pull the chutes, and away you go.
Roll you out the plane and pull the ripcord.
Yeah, exactly.
My son did. Honest to God, he did a bungee jump. I call it bungee. I don't know what the bungee or
Yeah.
He did one of those. And I went, oh God, that's just, to me, that's nuts. That's just nuts.
Well, I had a friend of mine do that,
Yeah.
and apparently either they neglected to tell him or he didn't hear the part about taking everything out of your pockets.
His wallet, everything.
Yeah, everything just like exploded out of it.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that I would have loved to have done, I would have loved to fly a fighter jet. You all right, Wally?
I'm good.
Attaboy. You look like you have. It looks like you kind of look like the Pope today.
He really does. I was trying to nail it down when he first came on, and yeah.
I'm not wearing a.
Wally, you don't have to be the Pope as long as we have your blessing. You don't have to be the Pope.
This isn't holy water. This is my sort of safety device I just purchased for keep people keeping track of me. So.
Oh, good.
Anyway, guys, I got a question, Hal.
Yeah.
And actually, before I start this, it's on this topic. Old guys doing crazy things to stay alive longer.
Yeah.
And Tom and I have been contacted by a gentleman who's putting a short film documentary together regarding Tom and I as old folks. And we're active, and particularly Tom, because he skates so much.
Yep.
And they're really curious about how we maintain our being so active and how it affects the longevity of life.
Yep.
So down the road, when that's done, I might get this guy to come on and ask us questions, because I don't know, I think we're just following our passion, and hockey seems to be the passion, but
yep.
Hell, when I look at your Facebook and postings and your photography work, I've just recently seen a lot of pictures of Japan.
Yep.
You haven't just been there, have you, or are you just posting them?
Yeah, no, I was just there a month ago.
Can you tell us a bit about the trip? How did you get into that? Did you just decide, I'm going there to take pictures? Somebody hire you, or?
No, yeah, I wish I hired somebody. So for the last, 10, 12 years, I have been traveling around the world, actually, 1 or 2 trips a year to places to photograph. And I've had a camera in my hand since I was in high school, but then, real life came along and I kind of put it down for a while, because in those days you had to buy film, you had to shoot the film, you had to process the film, you had to print, it was not only a lot of time, but it was expensive. Relatively, it was expensive. And then, oops, sorry. When the digital world came around, which is about the time my son started playing sports, he was old enough to play sports, I sort of returned to the photography side of my life. And because with the digital cameras, you can shoot thousands of photographs, and you just download them into your computer, and you can process the ones you want to process, and you can leave the other 95%, on the computer, or get rid of them or whatever. And so I got back into it, and then I went to a couple of workshops locally through a photography I don't know what you call it. It was a photo center that was sort of promoting photography. And I met a guy there that was doing some workshops. And so I started going on trips with his workshops. Death Valley was one of the first ones. Dog sledding out of Ely, Minnesota in the middle of the winter at 30 below was another one. And then I found another guy, and I went to the island of Svalbard, which is 500 miles north of Iceland. And we went on a group of us on a dog sledding trip for 8 days, camping on an island with, 1,500 residents and 3,000 polar bears. And that was an interesting experience. And so we've been to Europe and South America. Last fall, I found another guy out of New York that does workshops, and we was in Chicago for 3 or 4 days doing street photography, which I really like. And then I went with him to Japan, and there were 4 other photographers in the group, and it was focused on just in Tokyo, a city of 37 million people. It's a little bigger than Calgary, and and that was really interesting. And my wife has accompanied me on some of these trips, but she had no interest in going to Tokyo. And I've also been to Iceland 3 times or 4 times, 3 times, I think. Been to Cuba once. So I find that as I seem to have enough skill to do this that, I get some pretty good work. Actually, I'm on my phone, but both of those photos on the wall behind me are from Iceland. And so it's an interesting business, I guess. We'll call it industry or business. One of the guy I've spent the most time with has been a professional photographer his entire life, editorial photographer. So he'd get hired by magazines or newspapers or whomever to take photographs, whether it's Corporate Report magazine, National Geographic. He did a lot of work for National Geographic, traveling around the world with a writer and big budgets and whatever. But with the digital era, magazines don't pay for photos hardly at all anymore. And most newspapers have fired all their photographers. And they send their reporters out with their iPhones to take photos. Minneapolis paper still has a handful of photographers on staff. Well, anyways, the company I work for went on about a 3-year office refresh, meaning they were redoing the offices in this area, where the Twin Cities and western Wisconsin and Rochester. And the woman that was sort of in charge of the whole thing, as they got these offices, completely redone, and then the corporate art people want to come in and slap a bunch of garbage on the walls. And she asked me if I would if I would go out into each community and shoot photos that represent that community, and if I could run that whole project, which I did. I did the last one last year, and I was told that what I charged them was less than what they were paying for corporate art, and or a corporate whatever, they would just send them the artwork from Milwaukee. And so I felt good about that because they were getting a better deal, and I was making pretty decent money doing it. It was funding all these trips around the world. Now I don't have one of those, and I might be going down to Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, because our company has a big trust company down there, and they're expanding in this big office towers. So they want me maybe to come down later this summer and shoot for photo artwork. So that industry, though, the guys that used to get paid for photographs, now the only way they can get paid is to take these are called hosted trips. So they put trips together and people sign up and pay them. And and all you have to do is just write a check and show up, and they take care of all the arrangements, all the transportation. You have to get to some location because people like the trip from in Japan. There were 2 people from Toronto, and there was a guy from California, and myself, and then the guy that organized it lives in New York City. So everybody has to arrive at a common destination. That's on you. But I found it, to be very, in the off season hockey, something to do, and I really enjoy it. And so that's, and I've made 6 figures or more doing it. So it's been, but I don't have anything going on right now, which is good because I'm still kind of struggling to recover from this surgery on my shoulder. So it's not coming I'm not getting strong as fast as I would like. And I know about those kinds of things, Wally. So
yes, I do.
Yeah. So anyways, thank you for asking.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to, I think I've got my record going.
Okay.
And I wanted to, your story is amazing. And Peter, I'm sure, here we are. I'm the oldest of you all. I'm 79. What is your age, Hal?
I'll be 74 in October.
And Peter?
I turned 69 last week.
Well, you're a puppy.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you. You know what I did on my birthday?
Jumped out of a plane.
I wish. I had my blood work taken. for my physical yesterday. It's 2 years in a row. It's worked out like that. They say,
wow.
Can you do May 7th? I'm always like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And there we go.
Well, the interesting thing here, this guy, he's really been on Tom and I through this film company, producing this documentary on exactly who we are and why we still are.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously we're retired, but we're not.
Well, do you know what's the age of the gentleman that you're dealing with? You have any idea?
I have no idea. I have never met him. I can't even guess. But it's typical, and I don't know if you experienced this yet. Hal, I don't think Peter would have, but when you reach a certain age, people look at you differently, like you're old.
Yeah.
You're not.
Oh, yeah.
You're not.
Yeah, well, I am old enough to have that. Yes, that's.
So we've all got that sort of feeling of rejection or worthlessness or whatever, and all we're trying to do is.
Yeah, I word it as irrelevance. I feel like there are times where it becomes irrelevant.
Yep.
So Tom does what he does, and amazingly healthy. He's off to the Worlds. He won't be on today. He goes to the World Championships every year, but it's an extension of his passion. And like for me, the passion is hockey. It was all my life, and it is now, and I'm alone. And honest to God, if it wasn't for the Sharks call, the weekly call to talk to people, and generating some information that I try to share, it's not about money. It's just about the good of the game kind of thing. So that's my reason for living is I've got nothing else, and I hope the game can do good. And what you're doing, Hal, like you're still coaching.
Yeah.
You're still active. Now I'm curious about you're still working in a financial area. How much?
Yeah, well, sort of. I have a business, but my daughter's running it, and I talk to her every day, a couple of times a day. But she's buying it from me. I'll be done a year from January. Will be my last gasp in the financial business at 40 some years of it. my in hindsight, my when I was coaching in the USHL, and I was getting, this was in 1980, maybe one. I can't remember. I'd have to look it up. The first year, I'd been coaching junior B hockey before that for 6 years. And I got to the USHL and I got a salary of $5,000 and a car.
That's pretty good.
A leased car, right? Yeah, for the year. Yeah. And so I was a commodity broker at that time, which was good because the markets closed at 1:15, and then I could get to the rink. And then we had we had pretty good teams, and what we would do is we would put kids on 2 or 3 kids on a protected list of 21 or I don't remember all the details, but that were still playing high school hockey, and when they got done with the high school tournament or whatever, they would then come and join us and finish the season with us because we played into April. And I had 2 really good players from Edina High School that said they were going to come, and so I held spots for them, and they didn't come. They went on spring break to Florida instead. And I made a decision there that hockey was going to be my avocation, and I had to have a vocation to pay the dang bills. And at that time, I was still single. I thought, pretty tough to raise a family on $5,000 a year, and and a free car. And so I went into the financial business. I was already in it, and I made a change and went from commodities to stocks, bonds, wealth, what we now call wealth management. So I could make a living, and I was pretty good at it and pretty good at coaching. So I kind of had a dual track going on forever. I took a year off when my daughter was born, and I took a year off when my son was born. But other than that, I've literally been coaching since the winter of 1971, 72. I'm glad I didn't choose it as a vocation because, it's a vagabond's business, especially now. Unless you're head coaching at one of the big, programs, you don't really make much money. And even assistant coaches in the National Hockey League don't make, relatively speaking, they're pretty low paid compared to head coaches and players for sure. So I've coached college, juniors, high school, and then in the youth ranks, and I've found that you can make the greatest difference with these kids that are, I'm going to say, 13 to 16 years old. You can have the greatest impact on them as people and as athletes. And I really enjoyed coaching junior hockey because you can talk to them more like adults than you can with 13 and 14-year-olds, which you have to be a little more careful with them. And then with the juniors, that's all they're doing is playing hockey. And that was, so you had their full attention, because in both cases, at both age groups, that they all want to get to the next level. So they will at least put up with you because they recognize that you're important to them. And if they believe you're credible, they will listen. That doesn't mean they'll do it, what you're recommending, but they will listen to you. And it's so much of coaching that I think we sort of resist against is a transactional business. It's what have you done for me, the coach, today? And in the outcome of the games is the scorecard, winning or losing. And I gave up on that a long time ago, recognizing that, you know, the talent you have is the team you have. You have to coach the team you have. JP Parisi and I were talking about that one day after we were down at Shattuck playing against each other. We both had teams that won in Silver Sticks in Canada the year before. And then the next year, our teams weren't quite so good. And JP looked at me and goes, I guess we got to coach the teams we have, not the ones we used to have. And I thought I've always remembered that. So you got to coach what you got, and you got to try to give them hope for the future, make them better so that they can compete better at the next level. And at the younger level I'm at now, they got to have fun. They just got to have fun to do it and keep their passion alive for the game. So kind of a long answer. Sorry.
Well, hell, my wheels were turning here as you talked, and I'm going to get Peter to come in here. My thinking, listening to you, was, and the word you just used, passion.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I got out of it, doing good. You're helping those get better at what their passion, which is their sport.
Yep.
And here we are, every Thursday morning. This has been going on for 15 years. And different numbers of people to talk hockey and then follow our passion. So I'm just saying, as old as I am and being living alone now, I'm just living day to day and enjoying life doing this, hoping it's doing some good. And if
it is.
Yeah, and I appreciate it is, and there's no like tangible way of measuring that. But in any way, just meeting you guys weekly and talking about it and listening to your stories, hell's yours amazing. I taught school for like 35 years.
Mm.
Now I taught subjects, but I coached phys ed. The difference between phys ed and other subjects was people wanted to be there.
It feels that.
Yeah. And it was easy because some came because you had to take it in grade 10.
Okay.
But when you went to grade 11 and 12, they called it physical education 20 and 30. They were the athletes of the school.
Sure.
And then I coached school sports, football, wrestling, and track for over 20 years.
Wow.
And that was my passion, the coaching. And I love the classroom, but I love the team and getting out in the field and working with kids. And I learned so much about coaching, people, motivation, all the art of what you have to be able to do to communicate, to get the most out of whoever you're working with. So like you, as I taught school, I had that fixed income. I got to coach a junior A team, and I got paid $1,000 a month, plus I had a car.
Ooh.
Now it wasn't for a year, but it was more than I needed. It was a bonus. But to be able to manage the time of teaching subjects at school, coaching a junior A team, I had an office, and the gentleman that owned the team owned a car dealership, gave me a car. But it was really nice. And then I retired. I took a leave of absence for a year to coach major junior hockey.
Mm.
And much more money, much more stress. And I got fired about, 3/4 of the way through the season. And I discovered that my philosophy of coaching, which was more development than trying to win or get kids drafted, I just felt I went back to my vocation.
Yep.
And so my vocation was really the driver. And when I had to retire from teaching, um, I could still follow my passion. So who knows what we're going to be doing in 10 years. I'm hoping to be around for 5. But uh, Peter, just thinking about yourself and what you're doing right now, what keeps your motors turning and motivates you to enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, my most recent thing that I touched on a little bit, I think last week, is I have joined the staff for Team Puerto Rico. Team Puerto Rico has a men's and women's program, and I've got a friend who recently was named the head coach of the women's program. So I am sort of back in it at a bit of a higher level because they're a provisional member of the IIHF.
Nice.
What's that?
Nice.
Yeah, it's great. I'm excited about it, Hal. I mean, it's an opportunity to get back and to build. Cause I was like that from way back when I my dad started the farm and I bought it from him. I grew the nursery, I grew the business. I like to do that. I like to expand. I started.
Yeah. Yep.
I started a midget program from nothing. We had seven ish players, a skateboarder and a football player, and by the time I was done with that, we had won 2 state championships.
Yeah.
Onto the club hockey level thing where we went to nationals 5 times, won 3 league championships, prep school, the university, where I just graduated from, if you will, retired from, right? So this is an opportunity to help build a program essentially from not from scratch, but pretty close to it. And
Cool.
I'll be on a bench down in New Jersey. There's something called Dream Nations Cup, where we'll be playing teams from like Norway, the Caribbean. I think Greece is going to be there, a couple more. So I'll be on the bench again, coaching alongside him with that, and I'm excited. I'm excited about that because I love to build and watch things grow. I mean, that's kind of who I am.
I'm the same way. I love it. That's great.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. That'll be fun to do. That's the end of this month, so I'll be doing that down in Jersey for a few days.
Well, the good thing is, Wally and Peter, is that I learned in my business, my day job, working with people and their money, and the people that we typically have spent the most time with are pre-retirees into retirement and then, onwards. And those that don't have any hobbies or passions other than their job, they don't live very long. And, used to say, people retire at 65 and play 8 or 10 rounds of golf, and then, that's the end of it. And that would take them about 3 or 4 years. But they mentally, if you don't have something mentally to focus on and get excited about, every day is just another day on the circling the drain. And I pretty much I think that really is important. And the people that have the biggest problem with this, just by career, a lot of them are lawyers because they spend all their time being lawyers, and then when they retire, they don't have any hobbies. A lot the same with doctors. Some of these professions that require so much time and attention while you're doing it, it leaves little space in your life for the other things that you might be really good at. And I'm making broad generalizations here because there's always those that, even talking about, I think of some exceptions to the rule. And yesterday I was on a call, and the fellow was talking about aging, and and there's a MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They have a thing called the Age Lab, AGELAB, and they've been doing a lot of research on what you can do to keep your brain fresh as you age, and it's just little things. And my father died of he had Alzheimer's. He didn't die from it, but he died, and he didn't really do much the last 25 years of his life, other than they traveled and drank a lot of wine, and they weren't really excited about a whole lot of stuff. So I decided about 7 or 8 years ago to learn to play a guitar. And I could have picked something simpler. And it's really hard for me. But every Saturday morning, I go play guitar with a guy he's my coach, and I'm getting better. But I'm never going to be on stage. But that isn't the point. It's one of my favorite hour and a half of the week, along with the Sharks. And as you guys have, Peter, I mean, that's amazing going down. And I've always thought that would be pretty cool to work on a national team that's building and growing. I know Tom's done a little bit of that. I know some guys here that have worked over in Europe a little bit, with teams of, sort of typical non-hockey countries. There's one in Kenya. There's some Canadian former NHL guys down in Kenya building that program. But yeah, you have to have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. If you don't,
the other thing, Hal, you make a great point there, and I mean, you're probably the same as me. Well, probably the same too. When you're talking to kids, regardless of the age, and at the younger level, it's typically their parents saying, "Yeah, he or she, yeah, they're just hockey. It's just hockey every day. That's what they do after school. That's all they ever want to do. That's it. That's it." There's a point to me where that's kind of terrifying, because you have this goal that 100%, I want you to be the best player you can be. I got a grandson. I want him to be the best player he can be if that's what he wants to be. But I also want him to be able to maybe learn a musical instrument, which coincidentally my son plays guitar. Play guitar. He helps me with the plants, because I still grow a lot of plants around. I still have that nursery atmosphere in my yard with a garden and all that. I want him to be able to do that. But at every level where I've ever recruited or dealt with a player, and they say, "Yeah, all I do is hockey, coach. That's it. That's what I do." They think that that's a positive thing that's going to get them recruited. And in many instances, I know that I have work to do with you as a human being, because my job as the coach is to let you know that 100%, yeah, I want to win. I want to win championships. And we'll still be able to do that without you being a robot. And you need to learn that. I'm sorry that somewhere along the line, because I've done this at the college level too, which is, like I say, is pretty scary, is make people realize that there's going to be a point. It might be after college. I hope you play. We got some guys that played for me. They're still playing pro, which is great. But you have to be able to do other things. You can't be a one-dimensional human being, because you're selling yourself short. You're only here once. You should be trying to do, well, if it's not illegal or immoral, everything.
No.
Give it a shot. But I think we start that at a young age in our sport, and probably other sports too. We begin to create these little mini robots, and the parents buy into this, where they have to do this 24/7 or they'll never, quote unquote, make it. That's very scary to me. So I think one of the best things we can do with, again, well, you speak about like older experience. That's one of the things I learned is, man, I want to do everything, because at the end of the day, I don't want to look back and say, I wish I had tried this, or, you know what, this didn't work. And then to your point, how, like, the people that have one singular job that's so consuming, then they have nothing.
Yep.
You've still hopefully got 20 plus years left of your life.
Yep.
You've got nothing. That's pretty scary.
And when I was talking earlier, I forgot to talk about calf roping and riding and cutting horses, and that's like that is so cool.
Yeah, my neighbor did that.
Yeah, I had a cutting horse in the '90s, and I calf roped in high school, and so I've been really lucky. I've been able to do an awful lot of things. I've never, I mean, you can't do everything full bore, but I've experienced a lot of stuff. And then when I was coaching high school hockey, well, I did that for like 13 years, and so this was, and it's been about 6, 7, 8 years since I've done it. I'd walk in the locker room maybe 10, 12 years ago, and I go, they all had phones. I go, you guys know what an algorithm is? Blank stares. So I would teach them not what they are. So they understood that every time they got on that phone and got on social media or media or something, you're connecting through this incredible and sometimes scary network that's learning about you. And then it feeds you things that you reach into. And then I told him, I said, look, you can do everything right as a high school student, but most of the colleges rely on algorithms to pick students to come to their school. And they will look at where your parents went to school. They will look at the wealth of your family. They'll look on whether or not your parents are going to be good contributors to the to the foundation. None of this has anything to do with you. And they were really kind of shocked. And then I also would try to, on a regular basis, I'd walk into the locker room, I go, how far is it to the moon? And they go, what? What? How far is it to the moon? And then we would have a conversation. It's about 236,000 miles or 260, it depends on which side of the moon you're going to. And I always try to bring something that had nothing to do with hockey into the locker room to generate a conversation that might spark something in a kid. And then with the parents, and I use this still, well, we got to do this training. I said, look, I just want to tell you that the eventual outcome is already determined for your son. And they look at me going, what do you mean? I said, well, we don't know what the outcome's going to be. But the combination of his mental and physical genetics and the support system around him will determine how far he goes.
Yeah, and it's funny. Your high school story there. I got a quick high school story for everyone.
Tell me.
Coaching midgets. So this was a time when I remember the Oakland Raiders football team when they really were going. They had the fans in the stands with the jerseys on, and they had these crazy Martian looking things with spikes and everything else. They had all that going. So we're in the locker room talking about that one day, and one of the boys is a real Oakland Raiders fan, and one of the other guys goes, "Hey, you guys are nuts." And I said, "Yeah, well, I said to the kid, the derivation of fan is from fanatic."
Yeah.
Right? And he looks at me and he goes, "Coach, I don't even know what derivation means." So, okay, we got some work to do here.
That's way too funny.
Yeah.
They don't. Their language skills aren't always that great. I don't know what they teach them in school, but
they teach them to get through to the next grade. That's what they teach them.
Well, Minnesota, they can't even fail them. They have to move them to the next grade, even if they don't pass.
Yeah.
That's really scary. But you do what you can do. I was reminded on some hockey stuff I was watching. That coach's site is just blown up with, everybody, every coach on the planet now has got a coach's site hat and jacket, and they're doing videos.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and I put some stuff on there. I think Wally's put stuff on there. I don't put videos on. I write stuff because I'm still of the belief that you coach individual players, and then the culmination of that coaching becomes your team coaching. I mean, you got to have organize and run the team, but you got to coach players on an individual basis because they all need something different. And one of the guys I think he was one of the pro coaches even, was saying, look, you got to coach players, each player the way he needs to be coached. And it's not walk in the locker room and sing songs and do all this stuff. And everybody's different, and you've got to. And this is the challenging part of all of this, is figuring out which buttons. I hate to use that phrase, but which buttons to push. What motivates each player? The other piece I just read a couple days ago, I guess, was getting everybody to commit to whatever it is you're trying to do. And this wasn't just for hockey. This was in business and everything. Is get each individual to make a personal commitment to the team effort going towards a desired outcome. And I think it's awful easy for kids, and I mean, even high school kids, they will respond in the way they think you want them to respond. And if you have to spend enough time to build a connection and get them to make a commitment to the program. And hockey.
Have you seen in your industry? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, that's okay.
In your industry, so what I've seen in talking with a lot of different young people is, so what are you doing for work? Well, I'm doing this right now, but I'm not going to stay there. Maybe 2 years. So to your point, you're already thinking about what's next. How committed of an employee and how good of a job are you actually going to do where you are? Because you're looking, for the next shiniest bauble, whatever that may be. You're already not invested 100% in what you're doing, as opposed to being invested 100% in what you're doing. And ultimately, you'll probably have more options of whatever that next thing may be.
It's a big problem in the financial industry for sure, because they bring all these young guys in, gals. They slap them on a team with a book of business, and they don't want to work. Number one, we have an assistant working with us he's from India, and he's smart. He doesn't want to work. And I asked him, I said, we put in a new CRM, contact relationship manager system. And I said, I want you to learn that system and figure out how to help us with our business. He's not interested. So he won't do it. And our system has a thing, I can send him a task to do. But I can't do it from home on my phone. But I can send him an email. So I sent him an email the other day, asked him to send out $30,000 to one of our clients. It's sort of his monthly deal. And his response was, could you please send me a task to do that? And I want to take a task and shove it up his ass. I said, just do it. It's not that hard.
So is that because is that because the tasks are tabulated, and he potentially says, well, I want to have as many tasks as possible when I do decide to move on, or whatever I decide to move on to, so I can show people how hard I work, even though I don't?
No, it's not a scorecard, but it's part of a system, a communication system to get things done. but he doesn't. He wants the tasks, but he doesn't. As soon as you send it to him, he'll then prioritize how important he thinks it is, and do it when he gets around to it. And he's not all that busy. And being from India, he watches cricket on his work computer.
Okay.
And and yet he wants to be an advisor. So what the deal is, he doesn't really want the job he has. I think he feels it's beneath him. And he, we get into these conversations about investment portfolios or stuff, and the stuff that we do that works. And he likes to argue with us. So he's got, well, why don't we do it this way? Because this way works. I've been doing this for 45 years. I used to do it that way, but that doesn't come out with good outcomes for clients. And this is a better way of doing it. And I've written a book on achieving financial freedom. And so when we hired him, I gave him a copy of the book. He hasn't read it. I'll ask him, you read the book yet? No, I haven't had time. What do you mean you haven't got time? You're too busy playing cricket and watching cricket.
Yeah, it's so it is. It's a common. Unfortunately, it's a common problem. Like I always say, you don't start out retired. That's how you end up.
Yeah.
But it's the mindset of, I graduated from school. I've got my degree. All right, now it's on the coast. I just get the 6-figure job and away I go.
So I'm mentoring the son of a guy I hired a bunch of years ago, and he works at the old company, RBC, Royal Bank of Canada. And but I'm mentoring his son. His son was a national champion wrestler, and for the University of Minnesota. And people get confused, and to your point, the outcome is you retired. You don't start out retired, but a lot of these young people get on teams, and they think, okay, well, I got it made. I just have to hang around long enough till the senior guy's gone, and now I can run the business. Well, the problem is that the senior guy's clients are all older than the senior guy, right? and you're 40 years old or 35 years old or 20-some years old. All those clients are going to be dead before you're in the middle of your career. And so they gave us a guy on our team who was in his early 50s, had been selling wine until the pandemic came out. I don't know. Anyways, but he's Latino. Okay, so this was part of the DEI sort of deal, and he would never come to the office. He told us he had all these connections we have a very big Latino community here in Minnesota. He had big connections there with all those people. They all wanted to do business with him. This guy didn't work. I mean, he just literally did not do hardly any work unless it involved going out to lunch or going out to dinner. And in the early couple of years, the firm was paying for it. So he liked to drink a lot, and he was part of a group that was hired, financial advisor training program, and we went down to Chicago, I can't remember, for the graduation, and then so on and so forth. And 6 months into it, I talked to the person from corporate, saying, "So how many of these people?" And there were like 25 of them. "How many of them are out prospecting for business?" And they said, "None of them." I said, "So why did we hire them?" "Well, they're all on teams." Well, yeah, but this is a sales job, right? And you have to continuously bring new people to the business, because the current clients, number one, they don't all stay forever. They either die or they leave. I mean, it's very rare that you work with a family for 30 or 40 years. It just kind of doesn't happen. And especially when you start in the business and you're 25 years old, guarantee you that your first 20 clients won't be with you 10 years later for the most part. And you have to have sales skills. Well, they don't have sales skills, and they're not asked to sell. They're networking. But they spend most of their time having coffee with their friends at Caribou or Starbucks or somewhere, and then it's astounding to me. So the young guy that I'm mentoring, I'm just telling him, dude, this is a sales job. Get out there and sell, and you get way more failures than you get successes.
Yeah, you have to. It's kind of like recruiting, right? You gotta be willing to hear no a lot before you hear yes.
And most people don't want to hear no.
Right? No, I agree.
And if somebody's going to pay them to sit around the office and I call it the illusion of work. So when I started in the business, you were in the office and you had to read the Wall Street Journal, then you had to read the local paper. Oh, no, I got a cup of coffee, check the market. Oh, God, it's almost time to get ready to go have lunch. So you got to figure out where you're going to go have lunch and who you're going to have lunch with. Then you come back to the office and, make a few phone calls. I started Merrill Lynch. Guys were doing that, and I said, this is silly. So I made arrangements, and I would go do seminars out in Montana and South Dakota, ranchers and farmers, about how to hedge your business in the futures market. And I get in my car and drive out there and run these seminars, and they go, "You're crazy." I said, "Yeah, but every time I came back, I had 5 new clients." I said, "How many do you have?" They're sitting there cold calling, and oh God. Anyways, yeah, you're right. It's we all want to stay connected.
Hal, I'm sitting back here listening to everything you've said, and the employees who are sort of along for the ride and not pulling their weight.
Yep.
Is there any way, like I think of coaching, how do you push their buttons? Or are there no buttons to push, so you push them under the carpet? What do you do? Like, is there a secret, or like our job is to make each other better? I always say in business and in sport, it's not, I'm going to make more money than you. It's, I'm going to do things better than you. I'm going to win.
Well, I think one of the things, and Hal's probably hit on it with that friend's son that he's mentoring there, is that's why I find in a lot of industries, especially in the sales industries where there's groups or teams like Hal's talking about, is employers are very open to hiring former varsity NCAA athletes.
Yep, 100%.
They have a sense of what it means to be on a team. And I think that is huge. The ability to just, like, again, pick up a teammate who's maybe, talking about hockey, maybe a fifth liner who's trying to be a fourth liner, right? We know how to pick that guy up. Well, hopefully that translates to, there's somebody that maybe is struggling a little bit with sales and clients and, like, what can I do? Like, well, here's some ideas. Here's what I do. As opposed to everybody trying to figure out, like Al saying, so who's got the best coffee today, or
yep. That's a great point. And I've hired a lot of guys that were hockey players, and one of the things about hockey, in my opinion, is you get knocked down all the time playing hockey, and you get right back up and you get back in the game, and you learn to play anaerobically, because it is an anaerobic sport, not aerobic like soccer or some of these other things where or even basketball is pretty much aerobic. So you play hard and then you rest, and you play hard and you rest. But in hockey, also, because of to be successful, you need your teammates to be successful. So I hired a hockey player when it was 20 some years ago, and I actually coached him at Augsburg College, and he was from International Falls, and he ended up working for RBC in the finance area, and I ran into him, and then he wanted to do what I was doing, which is be on the sales side. So I brought him in, and I spent 3 years mentoring him and traveling with him to International Falls to meet with people he knew up there, because his family was pretty well connected, and I taught him how to do the business. And of course, no good deed goes unpunished. And he split off and took some of our joint clients with him, but at that point, I didn't really care. And he lives in Grand Rapids, and he's got a nice business up there and supporting his family. And I'm proud of him. I'm proud of the fact that, I spent 3 years mentoring him and, teaching him how to do the business. And I've done this with several people. And, but, you get to corporate, and circling back to what Wally had, was talking about, the people in corporate who are in training and are, supposed to be helpful have never done the job. They've never sat in the chair. And they don't know what it's like, when the markets go down 30 or 40% and your income goes down 30 or 40%. The corporate people's income stays the same. Right? They don't have to worry about it. They worry about keeping the job maybe, but and they all mean well, but they just don't get it. And
circles back to Wally and that gentleman you're going to be meeting and the value of experience.
Yeah,
I think run, guys. It's a early day, and
yeah, I do too.
I gotta go over to school. I gotta get my grandchildren.
And my daughter just called. She's my business partner, but she just called also, so I got to get back to her. It's great to talk. It's great to talk to you guys. I'm super excited about your coaching deal, Peter. I hope to hear more about that.
Yeah, I am too. I can't wait to. Well, I'm not sure if you'll be on when I get back, but I might give it a shot once I get the Indians settled.
There you go.
I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it a day here.
Yep.
Because I wrote down 3 topics. If you got the email, we never talked about one of them. but
all right.
But I think, like a good coach, you go with the flow. You know what you want to get out of it, and I brought that gentleman up about aging and purpose and survival and living longer, and that's sort of the gist of it. And yeah, we got into leadership and coaching and motivation, and it was great. It's a shark session, unbelievable. I'm not gonna edit it. I'm gonna share it with the gentleman who's going to do this TV interview, and I may get him to come on if he wants to interview us and ask questions, but.
That'll be fun.
I think you might want only guys over 75 or over 80. And I'm just going to close with one story. My 80-year-old best friend in my hometown in Saskatchewan, his boys are running his farm, large farmland. And every time I phone him, he's on the tractor. He's 80 years old.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. Hey, my dad worked on the nursery till he was 80. I remember one day, lunchtime, he got angry, he threw down his trowel, and he said, I got to go home. I said, what's the matter? He said, I'm tired. You're 80. You can be tired. It's okay. You can agree. So,
that's good.
I got to run. I'm going to get in trouble.
Okay, guys. Take care, Hal. Take care.
Yep. See you, boys.
Bye-bye.